Welcome back, friends. So a few videos ago, I showed you guys how to put a new transmission in a C5 Corvette. Well, while we were putting the transmission in the old China-Vette here, I figured out that the brakes were totally shot. The rear ones especially, they were just chewed the hell up, and that's probably because of all the burnouts at the track. So I've decided to go ahead, since I have to replace the brakes anyway, and do a minor little upgrade to the brakes. About a year ago, we actually did a video where we did a little upgrade using the Brakemotive brake kit on our Avalanche here with the drilled and slotted rotors. You can see them back there, maybe. I don't know if the camera's adjusted or not. But it came with drilled and slotted rotors, and it also came with new brake pads, carbon ceramic brake pads. Now at this point, we've put about 15,000 miles on that set of brake pads and rotors. They have performed flawlessly, guys. We've pulled trailers with them with Chaos Theory back there on them. The only issue I had with that brake setup was after about maybe 2 months, we had an issue where I was getting a lot of squeaking when I would apply the brakes. That went on for about a week. I'm not sure what caused it, if there was just some grime or something like that. And I ended up just taking some brake clean, spraying the rotors off real good. Like I said, that was probably about 2 months after we put them on. So, still over a year ago, I've not had that issue since. So they've done really good. So I decided to go with the same brake setup with the China-Vette here. So what you're looking at here is everything you get for less than $200 with Brakemotive, and I will put a link in the video description to this kit on eBay. There are rumors that this is just power stop equipment sold in unmarked packages, but I don't know if those rumors are true or not. But anyway, this is actually ends up being cheaper than just going to your parts store and getting replacement pads and stock rotors. So that's why I decided to go this direction. It is a slight upgrade. You got your drilled and slotted rotors here, and you also get the carbon ceramic pads front and rear, and they even throw in a little bottle of 12 ounces of DOT3 heavy duty brake fluid here, which we may use a little bit to top it off. Basically what I'm going to do is, I've already got the car up on jack stands. We're just going to rip the front wheels off and kind of get into this. I do want to say before we start, I did hear one horror story from a guy when I posted the pictures of this brake kit a couple days ago. I can't remember if it was on the Facebook group or on Instagram, but he was saying that, and I don't know if it was on a C5 or not, but he was saying that he's had an issue where, I guess after doing a track day with it or something, he had some cracks that developed from all these top holes here. I don't know. I don't know if it was just maybe a defect he had. Again, we've got like 15,000 miles on the Avalanches set up, and there's no cracking going on whatsoever. And we've been pulling a trailer with it and everything. But keep that in mind, guys. I mean, that's something to look out for. I guess it could happen. The honest to God truth is, I prefer just slotted rotors. Unfortunately, this company or no other budget company that I know of makes this kit with just slotted. They're all drilled and slotted. And I know even with higher end drilled rotors, I have heard people say that, they've had some cracking going on around the drilled rotors there. But I don't know. We'll try it out and see. It may be a situation where, if you just expose them to an insane amount of heat, like maybe you're doing, like road racing or something like that, it might be an issue. I don't think it should be an issue on a daily driver like this car, or even something that sees some drag strip duty like this car does. So we'll just have to wait and see. You guys know on this channel, if a problem develops later on, I always do a video and let you guys know about it. So just something to keep in mind. If you're seeing this video and it's like 2 years old, just check out the China-Vette playlist on this channel and sift through. And if you don't see a video that says these brake rotors cracked, then they probably didn't crack. Get our front wheel off here. Take our wheel off. Now once you get this far, you've got two 15mm bolts holding the caliper on. So we're just going to take the top one loose. But once you get that guy out, you can just kind of slide this boy down like this and pull your pads out. And you can see I've still got quite a bit of material left on these pads, but the rotor has been really eaten into. So good idea to go ahead and get these replaced. The back ones are even worse, guys. You'll see here in a little bit. Since we're replacing the rotor, we've got to remove this whole bracket here. So on the back side, right here and down there, you've got two 21mm bolts. These are going to be really tight, guys. I think they get torqued to about 125 foot-pounds. So you may need a cheater bar on this, or you may just want to use an extension and use your impact. I'm just going to try to break it loose without using the impact, so we'll see how that goes. Get out here with a breaker bar. Yeah, there we go. Much better. And same deal on the bottom one. Got a breaker bar on here. Break it loose. Then we'll finish off with a regular ratchet. Alright, we got that off. We'll just bring it over here and we'll set it back here. You don't want to leave this hanging by the brake hose. There's plenty of space back there to set it. So now onto the rotors. You can see the rotors. Well, now's a good time to check your wheel bearings, by the way, guys. And that one actually sounds a little noisy. Might be doing a video on the front wheel bearings here in the near future, but anywho, these rotors are held on with these little clips from the factory. I'm just going to take a small sledge, hit the back of the rotor here. Just alternate side to side. Now that I've got a little bit of gap there, I'll just take a big screwdriver and work these off. Then we'll just slide the old rotor off. Check these bearings again. Again, there's not a lot of slop in them, but you can hear them roaring. So we're definitely going to be replacing these in a future video. If I had them, we'd go ahead and do it right now. Next, we're going to take our new rotors, and these are directional. You can see it says front passenger side right here. So we're going to go ahead and slide him on. And while we're working on it, we'll take a lug nut and run it up on there just to kind of keep it from flopping around. Next, we're going to take our caliper. Now, they do make a caliper tool that sits in here and will compress your pistons back into your caliper. We don't have one of those. A lot of you guys won't either. So, easier way is to just take and set an old brake pad in there. And you can either use a C-clamp to compress this, or I've got just a really huge set of these pliers right here. So, I'm going to just take them, put them on here like this, use them to compress those pistons back in. Now that that's done, we can go ahead and set our caliper bracket back in here with our big bolts. And it would be a good idea to use a little bit of Loctite on these guys. I would recommend blue Loctite. It'll just make the job easier when you have to put brakes on again in the future, if this is a car that you plan on holding on to for a while. I'm actually going to skip the Loctite for the moment because seeing the shape that wheel bearing hub was in, I know I'm going to have to take all this back apart probably in the next couple weeks and replace a wheel bearing hub. So that's why I'm not using any Loctite at the moment, but I assure you, when I put all this back together in a few weeks with new bearings, I will be using blue Loctite. One thing I forgot to tell you is you want to check these guys here. So these are your slider pins, and you can see they're supposed to have high temp grease in them. Mine are actually still greased up really well, but you should probably pull these out. Of course, that means you'll have to take this completely loose from this bracket, but it's a good idea to pull these out and just check them, make sure they're greased up good. If the grease looks dried up, gunky or anything, you're going to want to clean these pins off, re-grease them, put them back in, and make sure your seals there snap on. These actually let the brake caliper kind of slide in and out, so it's very important that these move freely. Otherwise you could have all kinds of issues where you're eating one side of the brakes more than the other or something like that. Now these two big bolts back here that hold this bracket on, they get 125 foot-pounds, guys. Remember how hard they were to break loose. So make sure you torque them properly to spec. You don't want these guys coming loose. And again, just a reminder, Loctite. Now for our brake pads, we've got these nice new carbon ceramic brake pads. You see the little wear indicator here? That's this guy sticking out. You're going to want to put that at the top and in the back. And they should just snap in. It's kind of hard for me to look back there without blocking the camera. There we go. She's in. And now the one without the wear indicator goes in the front here. There we go. Now, if you've got your pistons pressed far enough in, uh-oh, my little shim came loose. If you've got your pistons pressed far enough in, you should be able to just raise this guy up, just like that, and put your top bolt in. I would also recommend using the little blue Loctite on that bolt. And we'll snug him up with our 15 mil. Good to go. Now we can take our lug nut off that we were using to keep our rotor from moving. Put our wheel back on. I usually just use my Milwaukee on the second highest setting, and it usually gets right between 90 and 100 foot-pounds. Then I can just go back and retorque them to just double check later. Whatever you do, if you've got one of these Milwaukees, do not tighten these on the highest setting. You'll rip the studs plumb out. Okay, now we're on the back side, and I got a surprise for you. You're just going to need the exact same tools. 15 millimeter, 21 millimeter, and then whatever the hell these lug nuts are. I don't remember. And on these back brakes, you can really see, they're ate up good, guys. Not a lot of pad left on them. They're almost totally gone. And again, that's probably because of the numerous burnouts we've done at the drag strip in this thing to heat the tires up. So that takes a toll on these back brakes especially. Same procedure as the front. We're just going to take this top bolt loose right here, which is a 15 millimeter. Then we're going to pull our pads off. Then we're going to take these two big bolts loose again. Those are 21 millimeter, and that'll separate the bracket and the caliper from the car. Then we'll slide our rotor off, slide our new rotor on. I don't think you need a whole lot of instruction on doing that. So correction, because of these little pins that stick out, it's actually holding onto the piston, and it's not letting me drop this. So on this back, we're going to go ahead and take both the 15 millimeter bolts out and just take this guy completely off. There we go. Well, we can pull it off and just set him up here. Pull our pads out, which are gone. Like there's not much left at all on these pads here. You guys can see that. Now on to our big boys. I'm not even going to try the front, guys. These might be a struggle for you if you don't have an impact, because a breaker bar, at least a long breaker bar like mine, isn't really going to fit in there. So I'm going to use an impact. If you don't have an impact, you're probably going to have to use a short breaker bar or maybe a pipe extension on your ratchet to get these. I'm taking the easier way out because when you've been doing this a while and you have the right tools, you get to do shit like that. Just going to slide our rotor off. We're going to go ahead and check our little brake pads on our emergency brake back here, which, I mean, we rarely ever use that. Those all look good enough. Good enough for who it's for anyway. And we're going to slide our new rotor on. Again, guys, these are directional. This says rear passenger side, so don't get them mixed up. And it's not just it's not just about the pattern of the drill, you know, the slotted rotors and everything. It's also about the direction of the vanes on the inside of the rotors there. So you're putting new rotors on over those old brake shoes on the emergency brake, so you know, keep in mind there might be a little tension there. The important thing is to make sure they're fully seated before you start putting everything back together. So on the back brakes here, same thing as the front. You want to pull these pins out, make sure they're greased. The grease is pretty much gone out of these, so I'm just going to take some brake clean and I'm going to put some high temp grease in these and put them back together before we go any further. Alright, we're all cleaned up, greased up. Time to put everything back together. Now on the back here, the bearings seem to be good, so we're going to go ahead and use some blue Loctite on these bolts, because I know I don't have to take them back apart right away. So we'll go ahead and Loctite them up and set them to the side. And the same thing with our smaller caliper bolts here. You can see they've actually got some red Loctite on them from the factory. I'm going to use blue Loctite. Alright, now this is all going to go back together, very similar to the front. The only difference is our bracket and our caliper are totally separated back here because of the issue with the way the pads mount. So we're going to go ahead and get this top one started, because it's generally the easiest. Get our bottom one started. We're going to tighten those up, and just like the front ones, you're going to want to break out the torque wrench. 125 foot-pounds, guys, on these big ones. Not on the little ones. I'm talking about the big ones now. Don't get that twisted up and end up spinning off your, breaking the bolts off on your calipers. It's probably a good thing that you have to take that caliper all the way off anyway, because I highly doubt you would have got your torque wrench up in here to torque these things with the caliper on anyway. There's just not much room. And 125 foot-pounds is a lot when you're having to use your short torque wrench. So I'm definitely going to be blocking the camera. Now we're going to do our same trick back here that we did on the front. We're just going to put one of the old brake pads back in there, and I'm going to use my big ass pliers here to squeeze the piston in. You want to make sure you bottom it all the way out too, guys. Otherwise the new pads are not going to fit. If you have a brake spreader tool, you know, it takes a little longer than what I'm doing, but it's easier to use probably, and they're only like a couple bucks at the parts store, guys. It's just I've always had these big pliers, so I've never been able to justify buying one of those little brake spreader tools when this works just fine and honestly works more quickly. Now we're going to take our new brake pads. Remember, the wear indicator goes on the back side, and on the front brakes, because of the rotation and the caliper being back here, our little indicator here went toward the top. But on the back, that's the leading edge is up here because the caliper's rotated this way. I hope that makes sense. So on the back, this is still going to go on the back side here, but it's going to go down to the bottom just because of the rotation. I've actually got the wrong pads for this side. There we go. We're good now. Yep. So they just snap in, just like the front. These are a lot thicker than the front. I might end up having to having to squeeze that piston in a little more. I don't know if I got it in far enough for all this. I'm going to go on now. We're going to be nice, play nice. Yeah, these are being kind of a pain back here. See, it's partially because they're so thick. There we go. It's partially because they're so thick. It's partially because of that that little nipple that sticks out of the pads that I was telling you guys about. Also, these back brakes, they have like a, I don't know if you can see how that's springing back out. They have like a tension spring inside the caliper here that kind of wants to push out and fight you. I noticed that when we were putting the transmission in, when we had to go put these brakes back on, it was giving me a fit trying to get these bolts lined up because of that spring tension. Alright, so I'm just going to snug these guys up. Then I'm going to do the other side off camera, and we'll take it for a test drive and bed the brakes in. Okay, the new pads and rotors are on. Looking nice. Just so you know, everything's not rainbows and unicorn farts when you've got power tools. I could not get a good angle with my impact on that bottom bolt down there, so I actually ended up having to hang the ratchet off of it, lay down here at the back of the car and hold on to the muffler while I pushed it loose with my foot to break that one loose. So there's your little tip. They're all on. The next thing we want to do, since they sent us all that fluid, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get as much fluid as we can out of our reservoir here. We're going to take this cap off. We're going to see that our fluid is black, so we really needed to do this anyway. And I've got a specialty tool just for this job. I've got this old turkey baster. This is what I use to suck out brake fluid, power steering fluid, all kinds of stuff. But basically all I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to suck out as much of this as I can with my turkey baster into a bucket, and then we're just going to refill it with fluid, and then we're going to do our brake in. So after sucking as much of the old fluid out as I could with the turkey baster, there actually was exactly enough fluid in the container they sent to fill this right back up to the max line. I'm sure that's a coincidence, but it's a good coincidence. So all that's left now is to bed in the brake pad. So I'm going to go over that procedure with you real quick. What you want to do without stopping the vehicle completely, you want to do 5 moderate to aggressive stops from 40 to about 10 miles per hour. And you want to do those like one right after another, because the object here is to get the brakes hot, but you don't want to come to a complete stop. Then after you do that, you want to do 5 moderate stops from 35 to about 5, again in rapid succession without letting the brakes cool down. Then after that, you just want to drive around for about 5 or 10 minutes, trying to use the brakes as little as possible. That's your cool down phase. Once you get finished with that, you should be good. Brakes should be bedded in and working great. And that's it. That's our budget brake upgrade from Brakemotive for our C5 Corvette. I'm going to go get this done so we can get CC moved back into the garage, get her finished up and ready for a track day. You need to get off YouTube, get out in the garage and get something done. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Bad Luck Garage.